A very good afternoon. It is 1 p.m. here in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and you are just in time for the Ambassador, where we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. I am your Ambassador Susan Nganga. To begin our bulletin, the United Nations Refugee Agency is warning of deep funding cuts as global displacement reaches record levels. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Chief Filippo Grandi, told the Security Council that deep funding cuts may force the agency to slash up to a third of its operation, a move, he says, will have devastating consequences for both vulnerable population and global stability.
United Nations Refugee Agency Chief Filippo Grandi warned the UN Secretary Council that his organization may be forced to cut up to one-third of its operational capacity due to a severe funding crisis.
The financial rules of my organization do not allow me to spend more than the money that I have or is firmly pledged. So we have now started cutting, unfortunately. I fear, and I said this to the Council in my final remarks, that we may be cutting up to a third of the capacity of our organization. This is pretty dramatic.
Calling the situation pretty dramatic, he criticized the Council's ongoing failure to prevent conflict and uphold peace, which continues to drive mass displacement.
Preventing and stopping war, upholding peace and security, this is the Security Council's mandate. This is your primary responsibility, and one that, you will forgive me for again saying it, this body has chronically failed to live up to. But please, do not resign yourselves to the defeat of diplomacy. I speak to you today once more on behalf of the 123 million people forcibly displaced, who are among the first victims of wars.
Grandi urged member states to remain committed to diplomacy and support, emphasizing that refugee-hosting countries and humanitarian workers are fulfilling their roles. However, lack of international backing risks deepening the crisis.
Refugee-receiving countries are making the right decision. They are doing their part. We, the humanitarians, are on the ground doing our part. You must be more committed and more united to do yours. That is the essential calculus for ending humanitarian and refugee crisis, Mr. President. Security and self-reliance, and both must convey a sense of being durable.
He warned that freezing or cutting aid already has fatal consequences, weakening fragile host nations and threatening global stability.
Aid is stability. Freezing or cutting aid budgets is already having fatal consequences on millions of lives. It means, among many other things, abandoning displaced people to their fate, taking support away from sometimes very fragile host countries, and ultimately undermining your own stability.
Speaking to reporters after the session, he confirmed that budget constraints have already triggered cuts, as the agency is legally unable to spend beyond confirmed pledges, a move he said could endanger millions.
I don't want to hear any more people telling me do more with less. This is absurd. You will do less with less. We will try to do it in the best possible way, the most rational way, maximizing efficiencies, becoming even more efficient, but it's going to be it's going to have an impact on millions of people.
Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken the witness stand for the first time in his long-running corruption trial, marking a historic and unprecedented moment in Israeli politics. This is the first instance of a sitting Israeli Prime Minister testifying as a criminal defendant in court. Netanyahu's trial, which began in May 2020, involves three separate cases known as Case 1000, Case 2000 and Case 4000. He faces charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust. Case 1000 involves allegations that Netanyahu and his wife received expensive gifts, including cigars and champagne, from Hollywood producer Milchan in exchange for favors such as assistance with U.S. visa renewal and tax issues. Case 2000 involves accusation of attempting to broker a quid pro quo deal with Yodith, publisher Anon Moses, for favorable media coverage in return for legislation to weaken a viral newspaper. Case 4000 involved the most serious, involving alleged regulatory benefits to telecom tycoon Shaul in exchange for positive coverage on the Walla News site. Netanyahu has consistently denied all wrongdoings, calling the charges, and I quote, absurd, and describing the prosecution as political motivated witch hunt.
אדוני ראש הממשלה, ראש השב"כ לקח אחריות, הרמטכ"ל לקח אחריות, מתי אדוני ייקח אחריות? מתי אדוני ייקח אחריות אחרי שראש השב"כ לקח אחריות?
לבדוק את זה, הרי זה ראש השב"כ, נראה לך שהוא יעשה את זה?
אדוני ראש השב"כ לקח אחריות, הרמטכ"ל...
נראה לך שהוא יבדוק את זה, אדוני?
תגידי מוטי.
לא. אולי תפנה ליועץ המשפטי.
אדוני ראש הממשלה, מתי אתה לוקח אחריות אחרי שראש השב"כ לקח אחריות?
We'll keep you more updated as that case continues. Now, over 100 countries around the world, raised their military spending in 2024 as governments increasingly prioritize military security, often at the expense of other budget areas. The economic and social trade-offs could have significant effects on societies for years to come. The war in Ukraine and doubts over U.S. commitment to the NATO alliance saw military spending in Europe, including Russia, rise by 17%, as Davis Karani reports.
The Cold War, the U.S. commitment to the NATO alliance saw the military overspending, leading to the rise by 17% as Russia's military expenditure reached an estimated of £149 billion in 2024.
NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Over the last 8 years, the United States spent more on defense than all other NATO countries combined.
A 38% increase from 2023 and double the level in 2015, represented by 7.1% of Russia's GDP and 19% of all government spending.
If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense.
Ukraine's total military expenditure grew by 2.9% to reach £64.7 billion, which amounts to 43% of Russia's spending. At 34% of GDP, Ukraine had the largest military burden of any country in 2024. Will countries manage to reduce the cost of military expenditure, or that will be determined by the series of world's activities? Davis Karani, GBS News, Nairobi.
Thank you, Davis, for that report. Now, in a show of growing global influence, BRICS foreign ministers gathered in Rio de Janeiro to tackle some of the world's most pressing challenges, from conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine to mounting trade tensions with the United States. Hosted by Brazil's Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira, the meeting signals the bloc's push for stronger voice in shaping international peace and reform. Here's more on the story.
BRICS foreign ministers met in Rio de Janeiro on Monday, welcomed by Brazil's Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira. With 11 member states representing nearly half of the world's population, Vieira highlighted BRICS' unique role in promoting peace, dialogue, and reform of global institutions like the UN Security Council.
With 11 member states representing nearly half of humanity and a wide geographic and cultural diversity, BRICS is uniquely positioned to promote peace and stability based on dialogue, development, and multilateral cooperation.
Key topics included conflicts in Africa and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, Haiti, and Gaza. Vieira further condemned Israel's renewed bombings and the blockade of aid to Gaza, calling the situation unacceptable.
The path to peace is neither easy nor linear, but BRICS can and must be a force for good, not as a bloc of confrontation, but as a coalition of cooperation. We must lead by example, reaffirming our belief in a multipolar world where security is not the privilege of a few, but a right for all.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was among the top diplomats in attendance. As the meeting continues, BRICS aims to strengthen its voice in shaping a more balanced and inclusive global order. Elvin Muyodi, GBS News.
Spain, Portugal and western parts of France have been brought to a standstill following a massive power outage that hit the countries for the better part of Monday. Spain has declared a state of emergency as the Spanish government convenes a crisis meeting at the country's power grid company, Red Eléctrica, to try and restore normalcy and establish the real cause of the blackout.
Darkness engulfed most parts of Spain, Portugal, and some western parts of France, following a massive power outage that hit the countries on Monday. Transport came to a standstill as trains and planes were grounded. Chaos on the roads as shops and businesses got shut down across the Iberian Peninsula in Madrid city. The cause of the outage has not been confirmed. Meanwhile, the Portuguese government has ruled out speculations of a cyber attack as the cause. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, pictured, has declared a state of emergency as the government convenes a crisis meeting at the country's power grid operator, Red Eléctrica offices. The company says it's working with energy companies to restore power supply back to normalcy. As you know, there has been power supply isolation in most parts of our country, Spain, and also in Portugal and France. This is due to power outage that occurred yesterday.
Y en algunas zonas del sur de Francia.
Until now, half of the country's affected power supply has been restored. This is according to the Spanish national newspaper report. Spain and Portugal have a population of about 50 million people. Victor Zing, the ambassador.
Thank you, Victor, for that report. The ambassador will take a short break. We'll be right back with even more.
Are you all happy to see me? Yes, I'm also very happy to see you. We're going to make ta-da! A banana milk package. Now we're done with the banana milk package.
Topic of discussion now is hustle culture. Hustle hustle culture, and this is working smart versus working hard. Working hard is where nina hustle. I'm working like a donkey. Unaweza pata maybe ulisoma yes, maybe kumaliza shule, maybe hii inahitaji maybe diploma, maybe ulifika certificate level. So I feel pia knowledge inachangia sana. Yes, watu kukua kwa informal. You have to like plan. You also have to delegate, and it's also sometimes about convenience. What is convenience for you? Tunaweza work smart. Hata kama ni kwa informal jobs, tuki-apply hiyo working smart, we can do something. Si lazima tu ikuwe ni kazi ile huko chini. I'm picking a dare. Okay. What? Call your mom or dad and sing the chorus of their favorite song loudly. Mama Vanessa, just a second. We are live on TV. I need to.
Which TV?
GBS TV. I'm on the Youth Hub and they want me to sing your song. I've been dared to sing your favorite song. So
don't sing that one, man.
No.
Sing yours.
No, I will sing a nice one. I know many of your songs.
Sing that is song.
I sing that is song, fine.
Loudly, please.
I love you.
Shout.
You're my baby. I love you. You're the best. Bye, mommy. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know.
My name is Tracy Otonde. I'm Miss County Nairobi and I'm also Miss Embakasi East. Modeling is an art by virtue of the model and by virtue of the designers. That's if we look at modeling in terms of pageantry, you're showcasing yourself. You yourself is a work of art. You're a work of art and you're showcasing everything that's in you and within you. And by virtue of the designer is because you keep showcasing the attires that they're made for you. And you have to look the part for you to be able to showcase what the designer was picturing. So yeah, modeling is an art.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back to the bulletin. Now we shift the focus to India, where in Kashmir is recovering following last week's deadly attack on tourists that left at least 26 people dead. India has identified 2 Pakistani militant suspects, while security forces have launched extensive operation in response. Pakistani has denied involvement and both countries continue to face clashes along the border. Meanwhile, China urges both nations to exercise restraint and resolve their differences peacefully rather.
'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. 'Resolve their differences peacefully rather. ' The town of Pahalgam in Indian-administered Kashmir is slowly returning to normal following the deadly April 22nd attack that killed 26 tourists. India has identified 2 of the 3 suspected militants as Pakistani nationals, and survivors have claimed the attackers specifically targeted Hindu tourists. In response, India reported ongoing small arms fire from Pakistan along the de facto border for the 4th consecutive night. Despite Pakistan's denial of any involvement, India has ramped up security efforts, detaining over 500 people and conducting widespread searches for militants. Protests have erupted in India with calls for careful actions to avoid harming innocent civilians. In the wake of the attack, China, a key regional player, has urged both India and Pakistan to exercise restraint and seek a peaceful resolution through dialogue.
China welcomes all measures conducted to cooling down the current situation and supports an impartial investigation as soon as possible. As a common neighbor of both India and Pakistan, China hopes that India and Pakistan will exercise restraint and meet each other halfway, which will properly handle relevant differences through dialogue and consultation and jointly safeguard regional peace and stability.
The international community continues to monitor the situation, with India accusing Pakistan of supporting terrorism in Kashmir. Meanwhile, the Resistance Front, a local militant group, has denied responsibility for the attack despite initially claiming it on social media. Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
It's not arm wrestling, and it's not for the faint of heart. In a small Bavarian town in Germany, competitors are putting their fingers and their pride on the line. It's called Fingerhaken, and this centuries-old tradition has evolved into a fierce and a fast-paced sport. Here's more on that story by our very own reporter Elvis Moyodi.
In the Bavarian town of Pang, just an hour southwest of Munich, 180 men in traditional leather shorts faced off in Germany's 64th National Finger Wrestling Championship, commonly known as Fingerhaken. This dispute-settling tradition has become a serious sport with strict rules, measured loops, and split-second battles of finger strength. The session lasts only seconds, but can end with blooded knuckles or dislocated fingers. But organizers say it's not as dangerous as it looks.
It's always been portrayed as being super dangerous. You're going to rip something and so on. Of course, there will be open wounds and small injuries on the fingers from time to time. It looks worse than it really is because there's blood. But within a week, at most after 10 days, all wounds are healed and you start training again.
Champions were crowned across age and weight groups. And next, all eyes turn to the Bavarian Championship in Mittenwald, where fingers will fly and skin might stay behind. Elvin Muyodi, GBS News.
Well, a culture it is. Now, hope for peace in Gaza may be edging closer to reality. Negotiations are happening in Cairo between key regional stakeholders are reportedly nearing and I quote, significant breakthrough. While no official confirmation has come from Israel, Hamas, or mediating parties, this behind-the-scenes development signal potential progress towards a long-term ceasefire in the war-torn enclave. Abdi Hamid Ali has more.
Talks in Cairo have drawn together delegations from Egypt, Israel, and Hamas. Sources say a framework for a permanent ceasefire is being shaped, though deep disagreements remains, especially over Israel's demand that Hamas disarm, a condition the group has so far rejected. In recent statements, Hamas indicated openness to a prolonged truce, conditional on an end to the war and the return of Israeli hostages. Yet Israeli officials remain committed to neutralizing Hamas's military presence and influence in Gaza. Despite differing stances and complex demands, the willingness of both parties to stay engaged in dialogue points to a faint but growing possibility for de-escalation. If this momentum leads to agreements, it could mark a pivotal turning point in a conflict that has already claimed the lives of 52,000 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis. The world now watches closely, hoping that the talks in Cairo may finally open the door to lasting peace. This is Abdi Hamid Ali, GBS News.
Shifting our focus to Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud says that he has not yet decided whether he will run for re-election in 2026. Speaking to a local media station, he emphasized that his priority right now is improving national security, boosting the economy, and ensuring Somalia's first direct election in decades. Here's more on that story.
The president, who returned to office in May 2022, said the security situation in Mogadishu had improved markedly under his administration, citing a steep decline in terrorist attacks. Mohamud added that improved security had contributed to economic revitalization, pointing to the expansion of commercial areas and ongoing construction projects in the capital. However, opposition figures, including leaders from Puntland and Jubaland, have raised concern about the election timeline and potential constitutional breaches. Despite these tensions, Mohamud said he remains focused on national reforms and will decide on a potential third-term bid closer to election time. This is Jeff Abuki, GBS TV News, Nairobi.
Moving on to Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a 3-day ceasefire this May to coincide with the 80th anniversary celebration of the Soviet Union's victory over Germany in the Second World War. The truce, which will take place from May 8 to 10, is seen by Russia as a gesture of peace, but Ukraine has questioned the timing, calling for a longer, more meaningful ceasefire to open the door to real diplomatic discussions. Here's more on the scene.
Putin declared a 3-day truce during the anniversary of the former Soviet Union victory during the Second World War. The temporary ceasefire will begin on May 8th and end on May 10th. Putin's declaration follows a series of talks between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, where U.S. expressed frustration over the lack of permanent ceasefire. Ukraine, however, remained critical of the short-term nature of the truce, with President Zelensky pointing out that the pause was designed solely to maintain order during Putin's military parade, not to facilitate peace. Meanwhile, Russia insists that any agreements must come through direct negotiations without preconditions, a stance Ukraine rejects, pointing to Russia's illegal occupation of its territory. Both sides continue to accuse each other of stalling peace talks, with the international community urging for a more substantial commitment to end the war. Putin's call for another temporary ceasefire underscores the complexity and tension surrounding any potential peace talks, with both sides locked in a battle, not just the ground, but over the terms of any possible resolution. The road to peace remains uncertain, and the war shows no signs of stopping. This is Abdi Hamid Ali, GBS News.
Thank you, Abdi, for that detailed report. Now we shift the focus into Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney emerges victorious in Canada's federal election, promising to fight against United States President Donald Trump's trade war. The threats of annexation. The rookie politician cemented the Liberals' fourth straight term in government, a rare feat in Canadian politics, while holding back the Conservative Party led by Pierre.
Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me? And who's ready? Who's ready to build Canada strong? Okay, we got that settled. That's good. Avant de commencer, je voudrais féliciter les autres chefs de parti, de leur campagne et de tout le travail qu'ils ont fait. Je les remercie pour leur service envers le Canada, maintenant et dans le futur. I want to thank the leaders of the other parties. I want to salute the contribution of Jagmeet Singh. I noticed his remarks. Leading on progressive values. Elizabeth May, who will be returning to Parliament, Yves-François Blanchet. And I want to congratulate Pierre Poilievre on a hard-fought, fair, good campaign, his commitment to
We say congratulations to the Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, with that, we conclude our bulletin today. Thank you for joining us as we uncover the latest developments. We'll keep you more updated as the story develops. See you tomorrow, same place, same time at 1 p.m. I have been your Ambassador Susan Nganga. Good afternoon.
Everywhere, GBS.